This is the Soft Power Podcast, episode 18. Hi, I'm Susan Callender, and as always, I'm so glad you're here. It's been a while since I recorded a solo episode, and I think it's fitting that today's focus is conversation skills. Here's the thing about conversation. It's so basic to some that they don't even give it a thought. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have perfectly capable and accomplished professionals, business owners, and entrepreneurs who have achieved great things in life, but they limit interactions requiring back and forth conversation of any length. And by any length, I'm referring to anything from chit-chat or small talk with a neighbor or colleague to full-length conversations that seemingly have no end. And I believe therein lies the problem. Conversations do indeed have an end point, and it's your job to control it. It's not the other person's job to release you from your obligation. Nothing lasts forever, right? And the best conversations end on an energetic high note and not just trailing off to nowhere. Do you consider yourself to be a great conversationalist? Does anyone come to mind when you think of someone whose conversational style you'd like to emulate? Being a good conversationalist is important, be it in business or social situations, because after the initial seconds-long first impression you make, it frames for the other person who you are and what they can expect from you. So within seconds, you can determine whether you're on the same page in terms of comfort levels and what you value. You can tell if they have a sense of humor or if they take things way too seriously. And all of this is important because no one wants to waste time with a conversationally incompatible person, we'll call them. Communication styles and conversation skills are constantly evolving simply because we're not static beings and we're always growing and changing in our worldviews or just the type of work we're doing, or at least we should be, right? We should not be the same person now as we were 5 years ago. I mean, if you visit friends you haven't seen since college, it's perfectly okay to return to that familiar banter and lingo that creates an instant comfort level. In fact, it's almost expected to an extent, at least for a few minutes. Then you find your more comfortable current groove, and your old friend has a sense of you're leaving the old you and moving into the language of who you are now and your current comfort level, and that's good for everyone involved. On the other hand, if you see a former colleague from, let's say, 10 years ago, it was your first career job, and you're reacquainted at a conference, both of you would expect each other to add more value and depth to the conversation because you've experienced so much over that past decade. We would not expect that person to be the same as we recalled them. Now, you know that I always take time for the introverts in the house, and while I'm at it, I'll also include anyone who's just generally quiet or maybe even a little bit self-conscious, too self-conscious to initiate a conversation. We'll put it that way. For some, hitting your conversational stride is a constant work in progress. Just the same, it's still important to learn how to initiate chit-chat, which can lead to in-depth conversations, because believe it or not, good conversations make life more full and enjoyable, as hard as it may seem to get them started. We've all had the occasion to assume right out of the gate that a person is a bit boring and then down the road have that very same conversation prove quite fruitful when that superficial banter becomes a lucrative opportunity that never would have come about had you not taken the high road and done your social duty of being I'll call you a delightful and engaging person. There's always so much more to learn about social discourse, and I've entertained the idea of creating a course on how to communicate with other humans. What I understand and what I'm hearing is that's what's needed, just basic core content on how to connect with people on an emotional level and how to ask for what you want, or better yet, how to communicate simple requests. By the latter, I'm referring to how people have lost their way with being direct and polite at the same time. And as a result, you'll hear a request prefaced by, for example, "It would be great if." Is that how we ask questions now? I've been told by acquaintances and business associates that they enjoy speaking with me. And I can assure you that was not the case before I made a conscious effort to be more self aware and a much better listener. That's because once you truly get it that you're low priority on your own agenda and you make it about the other person, well, I think it makes all the difference in the world when it comes to being viewed in a favorable way. I have no doubt you've met people who are great conversationalists and you hit it off right away and it felt like you had endless things to talk about. And you've also met people who are really difficult to converse with. You just can't seem to get it going. So from meetings to presentations to all sorts of things in between, we're always looking for or avoiding social interaction. And whether you enjoy it or you look for ways to escape, most conversations just start at that surface level. I mean, if you were called into your boss's office or a fellow board member needs to have an urgent word with you before the meeting gets underway, exchanging a pleasantry before diving in is really the best course of action. The reason for that is simply that you always want your audience or the listener to be as receptive as possible, even if bad news is coming. So there has to be a certain amount of, if you will, shallow dialogue that allows you to warm up to that particular person and the conversation. This is exactly where small talk comes in, and it exists between coworkers, close friends, and complete strangers alike. And therein lies the problem for introverts and shy or quiet people who generally dislike chit-chat. It's the superficiality of it all. But just hear me out that it's necessary. And given the option of speaking with a blunt and forceful person or one who greeted me with pleasantries, well, there's just no doubt which one I would want to have that conversation with. The person who knows how to get it started and not just cut to the chase. Just relax and approach the person that you're going to speak to. You might think that most small talk is a waste of time, but you only find it to be a waste of time because the thought of it makes you anxious. Now, years ago, when taking part in a weekly meeting, I observed a person who asserted herself the moment she arrived, and you could immediately see that group members respected her for it. What she did was simple. She greeted everyone at the table en masse upon arriving, and her upbeat personality was like a magnet. And I can recall seeing her walk in and it was like magic. How did she do that? It was a quality and an action that I wanted to have in my repertoire for sure. And if you're not quite sure what to say, all you need to do is give someone your full attention. Just being a good listener will make you stand out from the pack. Just be aware that being a good listener does not mean being mute. This practice just helps you to follow up on what's being said with intention rather than randomly making comments that are, for all intents and purposes, meaningless. Now, I can guarantee that if you assume every conversation will seem boring or a waste of time, it most certainly will be. On the other hand, if you think of every conversation as being the catalyst for something great happening in your life, then that will happen as well. That's because we don't get what we do, we get who we are. If you share interesting tidbits and perhaps little known or interesting facts, you will be seen as quite an interesting person. Adding detail also makes you sound more interesting. Don't just tell someone where you ate last night, for example. Tell them what you ate and how it tasted and how much you enjoyed the environment. Did anything else happen over the course of the evening? Was the waiter funny? How was the ambiance? This is just a lightweight example of what the details of a conversation of substance might include. It's not impolite to go a little deeper in direct relation to what was said. For example, when someone tells you their favorite vacation destination, ask in return, what did you like about it? If someone tells you they're preparing to purchase a dog, ask, what breed or why did you choose that breed? These simple questions can subconsciously elicit meaningful information, and it just helps the interpersonal trust that we must develop between each other in order to have great outcomes in conversation. So people are always giving off all sorts of cues from their body language and the tone of their voice. If it looks like someone is losing interest in the subject at hand, then change the subject. On the flip side of that coin, when someone gets passionate, be glad that they're taking the lead in the conversation. In fact, if you follow some basic guidelines for being a kind, empathetic, and a well-mannered person, you'll find the quality of your conversations getting better over time. And dare I say, you'll seek out opportunities to engage because you finally learned the secret to connecting at the most basic level. The guidelines include expressing genuine interest in the person. Who are they? What's on their mind? What do they enjoy doing? What motivates them? These are the questions you should have for every single person you meet. And if you have no interest, just simply move on to someone you really want to talk to, because life is too short to be spent on things that you don't like, for sure. You always want to be positive because you're remembered for the topics you broach. If you feel yourself going low, just ask why you feel that way. It's okay to talk about negative topics once in a while, but only when it has a specific purpose. Otherwise, know that we're naturally attracted to high vibe people that make our day. Period. Enough said. We also want to avoid being seen as judgy or critical. My best friend lives in the UK and he loves a good argument. Now, he would call it friendly banter, and I will still refer to it as arguing. And I give him time to make his point before I attempt to change the subject. We respect each other's point of view, and we know that sometimes it's just better to agree that we disagree. My point is that it's fine to express your opinion, but don't force it on another person. And remember, everyone has the right to be him or herself, just as you have the right to be yourself. When you start talking to someone, it's good to go in with an idea of how long the conversation is going to be. You can make ending many of your conversations a lot simpler if you go into them with an understanding of approximately how long you can talk. For example, if you're chatting to someone at a social gathering where it's expected that people will mingle and not spend all night with the first person they talk to, they may want to move on after about, let's say, 4 to 7 minutes. Knowing this will allow you to smoothly wind things down when the time comes. Now, the alternative is when you run into someone and you feel that you just have to keep the conversation going as long as you can. And then you get caught off guard when they seemingly end it out of nowhere. So to wrap this up in a nice, neat bow, what are the actionable steps you can take to connect better through conversations? Let's start by setting a goal, particularly in business conversations. As with pretty much everything in life, when we don't have a clear outcome in mind and wander aimlessly, it's less likely we'll reach a desired outcome. The importance of being a good listener cannot be overstated. The more keenly you listen, the more you're in a better position to make sure the words you choose to speak have maximum impact. Can you recall a time when you were speaking with someone and they were looking over your shoulder rather than maintaining respectful eye contact, or maybe they glanced at their phone or their watch, or worse, they allowed another person to enter the conversation and they didn't introduce you? Well, just don't be that person, okay? It's pretty horrid behavior when those things happen, and it can and will have a negative consequence on your perception and your reputation. On the other hand, I like when someone repeats a few key points that I made. By doing this, you ensure that you understand exactly what was said. We can all think of at least one time when we said something we quickly regretted or made a comment we thought was cute or funny that landed with a total thud. The best thing we can do is to take our time and think before speaking. And it's perfectly okay and respectful to let the other person know that you're just taking a moment to think before you respond respectfully. Now for the big question, how to end the conversation and move on? Now, it's okay to end a conversation quickly and cleanly. Sometimes people feel that they have to give a big formal closing every time a conversation comes to a close, and this is simply not true. It's unnecessarily dragging things out too much that can actually make things feel awkward. Something along the lines of a gracious and appreciative, "I never imagined there could be so much involved in homeschooling. I'll be sure to share your tips with my colleagues who are working remotely to be home with their kids." That's an upbeat way to close a conversation because I expressed gratitude for the information and its value by mentioning how I'll use or share it with my colleagues. And you can apply that method to any conversational topic as well. There are so many facets, aspects, and nuances to conversations. And if there's one thing we can all do to elevate our self-awareness and bring a sense of connection to someone's day, is to take the focus and concern off ourselves and shine the spotlight on someone else. Who knows? The end result, with the guidance I've given you today, may be the most meaningful conversation you've had in a very long time. Soft Power Society, do you overthink what you say in videos? Does it take 30 false starts and stops before you have what you consider to be an acceptable recording? If yes, you can get on the wait list and be the first notified when the Thrive with Live Video Challenge begins. If you fear creating videos to promote yourself or your business, this challenge is for you. It's not just about the mechanics. It's your mindset that's making you overthink what to say and going from where you are now with perhaps never having created and posted a video to where you want to be with a library of posts for your followers to choose from. You can join the challenge at businessclass.expert/live video challenge. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye for now.